Welcome to the Broker Room, guys. I'm Boban Jurisic, and today I have poor Munt with me. How are you, Munty?
I'm well, thanks. Yourself?
Good, mate. Good. Welcome. Now, Munty's recently been appointed Managing Director of LSH Credit Australia, a leading non-bank lender in Australia. Munty, tell us a little bit about LSH, and mate, tell us a little bit about your history, where you've come from, what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. So LSH is a global conglomerate. It's got about 28,000 employees, so it's a big business. There's a number of verticals within the business. So they've got the automotive businesses, which is wholesale and retail for brands like Mercedes, Lamborghini and Porsche. Then there's the property business. I think globally there's about 2 million square metres of leasable properties. And then the other business is the credit business, which is the private lending or non-bank business that they're in today. So big business. We're actively looking to grow. We've got access to capital. And we've got a great brand and a great product, so that's been really pleasing to join the company. In terms of my background, I've been in and around the broker market for about 20 years. So my first, the first openings for the broker business when I was I worked in New Zealand for 5 years. So I ended up running the ANZ broker channel there. And I guess that's where I sort of really got to know the broker business, the broker industry. And through that period, we saw a lot of change. So removal of trail and the impact of that on the broker business and ultimately the importance of diversification. So I think after 5 years, it was time to come home and stuck with ANZ, which was so I used to look after New South Wales, Queensland from a distribution perspective there. And then I thought I wanted to get out into a bit more of an entrepreneurial type of business. So I was the general manager at a large brokering house for about 5 years, and then moved into the private lending side. So, and that's, I've had about 2 years in the private lending space, and certainly it's a space that I find really exciting, and one that's got great value. I think we play in the SME space today, work closely with brokers, and it's really about how we can provide access to capital for people that don't fit the mainstream banks, which is really important, in a normal economy, but particularly in light of the geopolitical challenges and the economic challenge we've got today is we want to keep small businesses running, and brokers play a key role in that.
I've been following your career quite intently for the last few years, Matt. I've seen you grow. Like you said, ANZ, regional executive. You were the GM of a large broker firm, which I used to fund when I was at Pepper, when I headed up White Label. And you and I have worked together in the industry, touch base, and I'm intimately familiar with LSH as well through some of the consulting work that I've done previously. And not to play it down, but mate, it's a huge conglomerate, right? And from what I understand, the largest distributors of Lamborghinis in Southeast Asia, the largest distributors of AMG cars in Australia, mate. It's huge, and it's a privately run business. It's a family owned business, I believe.
That's correct, yeah. With
the market cap of Westpac, the second largest Australian bank.
Yeah, look, it's a big company, and like you say, it's a family owned business, and I think the beauty of that is the values and the ethics really come through as well, and that's something again for me that's really important, and also for our brokers and clients, they'll see that the way we do business and they'll build trust in that. So that's been massive for me, and really loving the focus on the long term as well.
So what excites you about your new role? You've gone from MD at Assetline, now you come across to LSH as MD. What excites you about the new role?
I think, we've talked about the group, and I think that's a big plus. The values and ethics and long-term approach to lending, I think that's really important. I love the private lending space, and I love working with SMEs and brokers. So they're all things that I find really exciting. And they were sort of important, I guess, components of the interview process. But once I've got on board, we've got a really strong team. And that's a big plus. They've built a great business today, and we'll just look to continue to grow that out.
So you're hiring, you're looking to grow the business?
Yeah, we're hiring at the moment, looking for more business development managers, and we'll continue to grow out the operation and credit sides of the business as well. We've got a great product. Brokers come back to us and clients come back to us, and I think that's probably the biggest tick you can get is when you've got people coming back to you as as to how strong your proposition is. And, I think that comes with being a trusted lender and a transparent lender, which is important in the private lending space because everyone's heard the horror stories.
Yep, I agree. Now, some of our listeners might not know what private lending is. Where does it fit into the picture? What does it mean? Tell us a little bit about private lending in itself, right? Not just talking about LSH, but what is private lending and why should brokers and clients come to you?
I mean, you've got two types of lenders. One are ADIs, people that take deposits, and then you've got non-banks and privates. And that's ultimately about how they raise the capital to lend. So we're a balance sheet lender. Others will raise money from investors and either you invest into a fund or a deal-by-deal basis. So there's a number of different ways and forms of funding the lending. Typically access to credit is different to the banks, and the banks have got a lot of churn with staff and a defined risk appetite. So I think they tend to find it harder to understand SMEs and how they operate and then ultimately how they support SMEs. So that's where you'll find a lot of the non-banks play. And it's a great place to operate in. It's a big market, one that's probably not served as much by brokers as what it could be. So I think there's probably about 35% share on the commercial space, which is closer to 70% share on the resi space. So there's a real opportunity there. And as I mentioned, that access to credit. So I think non-banks will play a larger role in the commercial real estate than what they do today. So here they make up about 10% of the market. If you look at the more mature markets of the US and the UK, you're probably looking at about 40 to 50% market share. So, I think there's opportunity for growth for brokers and the market growth and that access to credit.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have got your own funding, I believe, right?
Correct, yeah. So
Tell us the positives of that. What does that actually mean? And why is that a really, I know why it's a big deal, but our listeners need to understand why it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, ultimately, we're not looking to sell down a deal after we fund the deal or before you fund the deal. So ultimately, we will make the call on what our risk appetite is and what we say yes to and no to. So we're looking at our own risk return and we're not trying to match that up with investors that are coming into the business. So, it's a great asset for us. There is certainly capital there we've got to lend, and we don't have liquidity issues if investors are drying up, or they're not wanting to invest in deals and so forth. So ultimately, that should enable us to move through the peaks and troughs of a cycle a little bit easier, given we've got the liquidity there than perhaps some of the other funding models.
Yeah, and given the hot topic at the moment, rising interest rates, cost of funding, all that kind of stuff, having your own funding, having your own warehouse, what are the pressures? Are there any issues with interest rates? Are you able to come into the market with a cheaper product? Talk us a little bit through that.
A lot of the stuff that's happening in the economy today will impact the banks a lot more and who they can and can't say yes to, which ultimately means SMEs particularly still need access to credit. So they need to find that from somewhere. So that does create opportunities in our space. And I think that comes down to finding the right product at the right price. And there are lots of good options out there, and that, again, is an opportunity for brokers to actually understand the private lenders and the private lending market and the non-bank space and find the best option. Everyone's got a slightly different risk appetite, and generally people will price according to that. So there are plenty of options out there. It's just a matter of finding the trusted sources. Speaking
of options, mate, what are the pitfalls? What should brokers look out for when they're dealing in the private lending space?
Yeah, look, I think, there are some great lenders out there, and that's a positive. There are some not so transparent lenders out there also, and they're the ones to look out for. So, I think the beauty of the broker market, it's a really tight-knit community. So, I'd reach out to a few colleagues and ask if they've had any experience in this space. Aggregators have also got a key role to play in this. So, aggregators will be talking to brokers daily, will understand where things have gone well and not so well, and sometimes have to get involved in those scenarios. So, I'd speak to brokers, I would speak to the aggregators and just do a bit of research on some of the lenders. And you're looking for things like how long have they been around in the market. I'd always make sure before you sign anything that you read it thoroughly, because it is very different and there's lots more implications of signing things in the private lending space. So getting independent
legal and financial advice.
Yeah, but also the terms within an offer, and then the terms within the documents as well. Because quite often there's costs that people need the money, so they're signing without necessarily understanding the contract really well. And there can be some nasty surprises in that up front, during, and at the exit as well. So I'd make sure that you really understand the terms and conditions that you're signing up for. Just take the additional time. Don't let speed stop you from making the right decision. Take a little bit of time and slow down to speed up and make the right choice.
Agree. Mate, well said, and we'll put together. Now, what are your thoughts on where the broker industry is heading at the moment, and how does private lending fit into that? And where's private lending going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? You mentioned earlier on where private lending is a small portion of the Australian market, but in the more established markets, if you like, around US, UK, around the world, the percentage is a lot higher. What are your thoughts on that, and where's it all heading?
Yeah, look, I think the good thing that we're starting to see is a little bit more competitions come in to the non-bank space, and you've got some really good operators in there, and I think the space will continue to grow, particularly around that servicing of SME commercial type of clients, because I think you need a better tenure of staff with greater understandings of how businesses work and being able to understand financials and markets and security as well. And I think that's the expertise that comes into the private lending and non-bank space. You get better experts who are more invested in the companies and want to hang around a bit longer and can build that relationship. So I think it is a bit more of a relationship-focused model. And I think that becomes the key difference, because if you can sit down with someone and understand their business and then tailor a solution around that, as opposed to more of the factory style lending, I think there's a lot of merit in that.
The conveyor belt lending.
The conveyor belt lending, yeah. So absolutely. I think the space will grow, and that will largely come down to as brokers, because typically a client is not going to find a non-bank lender themselves. They're going to go and see a broker. And as brokers start to write more commercial and SME lending, I think the options for lenders will broaden as well. I'd encourage the brokers, probably half your book is actually an SME client in some way, shape or form. So it's a great opportunity to diversify.
And that's a big topic at the moment in the industry, right? Diversification, everybody's talking about it, the aggregators, the banks. We are heading for tougher times in the economy. Absolutely. There's no ifs or buts about it. And diversification for brokers is key at the moment. I mean, if you were to wrap it all up today in terms of everything that we talked about with LSH, with private lending, why come to LSH? What sets you guys apart from all of the other private lenders out there?
Yeah, look, I think, the one thing I will say, if you come as a client to LSH, you'll actually come back again. You'll have a really good experience. We've got an incredibly experienced BDM team who get involved with the broker and the client. Product has got no hidden hooks in it. We're really transparent around the way we do business. We've got strong values and ethics. There'll be no surprises, and we're a really competitive product in the market as well. So if you look at the risk spectrum from the banks to, say, a payday lender, we'd be close to the banks in terms of the way we like to operate, and the rates and that type of thing that we put out to the market. And again, that bit about ethics is massive for us. So we will continue to grow out the proposition, speak to more brokers, and I think the experience will speak for itself.
Paul, that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for coming into the broker room. Appreciate your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
No, thanks for having me on board. It's been a pleasure, and value the opportunity. Thanks, Boban.
Thank you.